Welcome to the Totally Honest Kitchen. My name is Mark. Today we are doing egg rolls, and today we're talking a little bit about cheater recipes. A cheater recipe, to me, is when you take prepackaged containers of things and make them into recipes. So today, I've got some prepackaged egg roll wrappers. I've got some prepackaged cooked shrimp, and I've got some prepackaged coleslaw that we're just gonna make into egg rolls. The coleslaw is just the pre-shredded carrot and cabbage deal that you can get at the supermarket. You could also cut up and shred your own cabbage and carrot, but some nights you're not going to want to do that. Some nights you're tired from work, you just want something easy. This is how you make a meal real easy. So we're going to start by mincing up some parsley. This was mostly done already. I just needed to go over it again because, you know, sometimes you don't go over it all the way. And that's about 2 tablespoons of parsley. We're mostly following the recipe that can be found on the packaging with 1 or 2 slight alterations. The only alteration I've made so far is that we're using coleslaw instead of broccoli slaw. Broccoli slaw is like coleslaw, only instead of the cabbage you use broccoli. We're also going to mince up about 1.5 tablespoons of garlic. Notice, once again, we are doing these things in an assembly line fashion. We are just, whatever needs to be minced, we're mincing back to back. Why would you do it any other time? And we're going to go ahead and mince up our garlic. Now, some people would tell you that this sort of cheater recipe isn't exactly from scratch, and they're right, it's not, but it does give you an opportunity to learn a couple different things. One, it gives you a chance to learn flavor profiles. Some people have a hard time getting into cooking foreign foods just because it's hard to do anything but follow a recipe when you're doing something that's outside of your comfort zone, right? And sometimes you wind up with entirely new flavor profiles that you're just not used to. That looks about right. Maybe a little more. So you have a hard time knowing where the fat or the acid or the salt come from in those recipes. Now, this is pretty basic though. In this case, a lot of the salt and the fat are coming from our deep fried egg rolls, and you're going to get a little bit more salt and a little bit more acid from the dipping sauce that we make later. So we're going to start by taking our 2 tablespoons of butter, heating them over medium heat. Once that's melted, we're going to take 2 cups of our cabbage slaw. You can make your own slaw at home if you want. You can do whatever. I'm going to add in about 2 tablespoons of parsley and about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. And we're just going to saute this for a couple of minutes. Let it soften up. Then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, ground ginger. We're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of sesame oil. We're going to add in 1/2 tablespoon of honey. And I can already smell it starting to smell like egg rolls. I've never made egg rolls before. This is why we're doing it this way. Sometimes the Totally Honest Cooking Show is going to be about learning together so that we can grow together, right? And There's no shame in that. Now next, our recipe calls for cooked shrimp. You could buy raw shrimp and do it that way. That is totally an option. Instead, we're just gonna add in pre-cooked shrimp because it calls for pre-cooked shrimp, and a good source of pre-cooked shrimp are these pre-cooked shrimp that you get at the grocery store in the freezer section, already tailed for you. So we're adding in 1.5 cups of these pre-cooked shrimp. Whoopsie doodle. Watch out, make sure you don't get any of that water from the bag in there. Like I said with the shrimp scampi episode where we did shell and tail our own shrimps, don't let anybody shrimp shame you, okay? These are perfectly fine to use in anything you want to cook them in. They should not get any hate at all. Anybody who tells you, oh, you need to go to the shrimp counter or the fish counter at the grocery store and get those shrimp, well, you can do that. That is an option. The problem, the thing there is that those shrimp are also flash frozen. Those shrimp are frozen in the exact same manner that these shrimp are. They're just not pre-cooked. They're not necessarily pre-shelled and deveined, and they've been thawed. So this may or may not be more fresh than those shrimp, depending on when they were frozen and when those were frozen and all those other factors. Unless you're buying your shrimp directly from a fishery and you know that they got those shrimp that day, you don't know what you're getting. Anyway, we're gonna move into the frying process now. I'm back and I've made a little egg wash rolling station. So what we're gonna start by doing is giving our mixture a little mix, and then we're gonna take 1/4 cup of our egg roll mix, plop it down in the middle of our egg roll wrapper. Now the instructions say to use 2 teaspoons, but I think I can get away with 1/4 teaspoon. And then we are making a little envelope. So once we have our little envelope, we've brought in our sides, our edges, we're just gonna egg wash up here. Then we're gonna roll them up. And hopefully that little tear that I made will go away. Don't worry if you don't get it right the first time. It'll probably be okay. We'll see if that one explodes when I throw it in the deep fryer, right? Up, across, across, egg wash, roll, up, across, they're sticking together, across, Wash. Roll. Now, if you're doing a big gathering, or if you want more than 4 egg rolls or 5 egg rolls, my recommendation so far is to make sure that you double this recipe. Again, this is my first time doing it. I wasn't sure how much to expect from this, but it does seem like you're going to want to double, maybe even triple this if you want a big platter full of egg rolls. You could also substitute the shrimp for ground pork. You can probably even do some barbecued pork. That would go good in these. Really, the sky is the limit. There's all kinds of stuff that you could fill these with. The directions say to deep fry these at 375 degrees. So I'm putting 2 quarts of peanut oil in my wok. You can use any pot you have handy for this. I'm using the wok because it's a lot harder to accidentally make a wok overflow. And I don't even need to use all of that. So I have a Dutch oven that I use sometimes. I have a stock pot that I use sometimes. But the conical shape of the wok, as J. Kenji Lopez Alt will tell you, helps to prevent wok accidents. Or the conical shape of the wok, as J. Kenji Lopez Alt has said on his channel, can prevent you from making silly mistakes because it'll prevent overflow. I'm gonna heat this to 375 and then we'll be right back. While that oil's coming up to temp, I'm gonna go ahead and make the manufacturer's recommended dipping sauce. You could also make some yum yum sauce, where you mix Kewpie mayonnaise with a couple things. But I'm just gonna go ahead and make this soy ginger sauce that they seem to recommend on the packaging. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, half a tablespoon of sesame oil, a tablespoon and a half of honey. This calls for a teaspoon of ginger. I don't know whether that's fresh or not, so I'm just gonna clean off my ginger using the back of a spoon. You know that trick. And then I'm gonna microplane it into the sauce for finishing. And once you have your ginger, you're just gonna grate it on your microplane. And once you got your ginger in there, we're gonna add a half a teaspoon of sesame seeds. And then I'm just gonna incorporate this together with the spoon until I can't feel the honey resisting anymore. When it comes to deep frying, you really want to get yourself one of these fancy schmancy instant read thermometers, because they'll help you keep track of the oil temperature. Now, I'm of the mind that it doesn't really matter what temperature you keep the oven on for this, as long as you monitor the oil temperature. So usually I start on medium, and then as I become more impatient, I go closer to high. It also doesn't matter what kind of vessel you use for this. Notice that I'm using this wok, so I have a little bit more control over the oil level. But you can use anything. The only thing you don't want to use is non-stick coating, because if it gets hot enough, you can vaporize the non-stick coating, and you don't want to breathe that in. We're around 350 right now with the oil temperature, so we're waiting for another 25 degrees before we drop these bad boys in. Okay, we're gonna drop a few of these in. I'm gonna save the questionable one for last. Ooh, that one ripped. That one ripped too. These three I'm gonna re-roll. We're just gonna fry these till golden. The three that look like they got a little too much egg wash, those are gonna need re-rolled so that they don't explode. But I think other than that, we're good. We're gonna let these float around until they get around the right color. If they start looking like they're too dark on one side, try to flip them. They do seem to want to stay on one side though, which is interesting. They will finish up pretty quick though. And as they start looking done, we're just going to pull them out. If they look done in some parts and not in other parts, we're going to take our spider and give them a little twist. Okay, I'm gonna lower the heat back down. Oops, that was almost a mistake. I've lowered the heat back down. Now I'm going to re-roll these. I'll be right back for the plating. As I was going through and doing this, I realized that you don't need the egg wash. You can just use water. So, FYI, you can skip the egg if you want. And as always, we're gonna do our little photo shoot for the gram. So we're gonna take out our finished egg rolls. We're gonna put them around our sauce. Make sure you turn the heat off on your pot of boiling oil. Once that cools all the way, you can funnel that back into the bottles. With something like a wok, you're going to want to funnel it into a pot or a measuring cup first. But look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. So, that's a pretty quick meal if you don't want to do all the prep work for it. Buy the coleslaw and the shrimp in advance, and it's totally fine. Okay, like, subscribe, click the little bell, and me and these egg rolls are going to go have some bonding time. See ya.